Welcome back to Old School Sports and our Out of the Park Baseball 24 playthrough of the Buffalo Wings. We are at the start of the 2034 free agency period. We felt at the beginning of this offseason we had four potential holes that we wanted to fill on this World Championship roster. Starting pitcher, catcher, third base, and a corner outfielder with a left-handed bat. And we filled two of them already. Kind of a starting pitcher slash swingman slash potential reliever was really the way we defined that role more specifically than starting pitcher. And we exercised our $10 million option on Andrew Painter, who had an excellent year for us last year, to bring him back and fill that potential hole. We made a trade earlier to bring on the young catcher Walt Miller, who will be in the mix with Andres Medina to be our starter. Miller has a better bat than Medina, at least in terms of making contact and avoiding strikeouts and being somewhat well balanced. Medina's glove is superior, but he's got a few more holes in his game, as evidenced by his 66 strikeouts and 213 at-bats for us. But I think with those two, we've got competent to excellent defense and acceptable to competent offense from the catcher position and not spending a ton of money on it. So I don't think we're in a bad position with that hole. So that really leaves us with two holes as we begin free agency here. And you can see that we've increased our money available through three minor trades that we've made that I'll talk about shortly. But we've got over $30 million to spend for this upcoming season to address the two remaining holes at third base and a corner outfielder. And if one or both of those players end up being left-handed hitters, that would be positive. Certainly want one of them to be a left-handed hitter with a little pop in their bat. And we have made three minor trades to clear up a little bit of money. We traded away a couple of veterans, David Aranya and Vaughn Necker, who were both making the major league minimum, out of options. We basically just got minor league junk back in return at this point, but we did get some cash in return for both of them, which helped us. And then the Yankees were looking to move on from Jace Barofin, formerly of the Buffalo Wings. He was our first round draft pick 11 years ago at this point, in 2023. And we got the Yankees, he's in the final year of his contract, we got the Yankees to retain 75% of that $6 million contract. They just wanted to get it off the books. They were just looking for filler players and not having to pay 100% to Barofin. He is an slightly above average offensive player over the course of his career. He's done much better in the friendly confines for a left-handed hitter of Yankee Stadium than he did when he was with us. I don't think there are any guarantees that Barofin even makes our 26-man roster if we are able to make a move in free agency for a better left-handed hitting corner outfielder. Certainly don't have a problem doing it. Barofin's not great, but he does have 199 home runs over the course of his career, 110 WRC plus, and he is competent at either right field or left field if we have him practice that position a little bit in the preseason in spring training. So he's really just an insurance policy for us. Given that we're only on the hook for $1.5 million of his salary, we would not have a problem cutting him if he's not one of our 26 best players and we can't get something back for him in a trade. But it does tentatively fill one of those holes. And I'll talk about the reason I don't mind having him tentatively to fill one of those holes shortly. But before I do that, did get a interesting question, or I guess more accurately, a request from Sacruth on whatever happened with Humberto Duque. You may remember Duque. He is a guy that we spent the full 4.75 million on as a international amateur free agent in 2028. Was one of the top prospects in our system, and we ended up trading him away about closing in on 3 years ago for Juan Estrada, the young two-way player with the Pittsburgh Pirates, who we've recently signed to a long-term extension. And Duque, who was at one time one of the top prospects in baseball, just really hasn't developed. He's 23 years old now, and he still hasn't gotten out of rookie ball in the Pirates system. They probably should have promoted him this year. He hit 274 with 16 homers and 197 at-bats, 186 WRC plus, and his WRC pluses the last 3 seasons have all been over 130. So I don't really understand exactly what they are doing, keeping him down in rookie ball so long. He certainly doesn't appear quite ready for the majors yet. If he fully develops, he still could be a very interesting major league bat. But at 23 years old, there's no guarantees he's fully going to develop at this point. And if I was managing him, I'd have moved him on to A-ball or high A-ball certainly by now. Just doesn't seem like he's developing all that great down in rookie ball in his early 20s. Try something different if we think he's got a lot of potential and he's just not realizing it. So at this point, pretty happy with that trade. Juan Estrada, as I mentioned, an effective two-way player for us, penciled in as our number 3 starter for this upcoming season. And he's also got a interesting bat, 287 career hitter, 388 career on-base percentage, only 1 career home run, not any pop in that bat at all. But he is pretty effective at hitting some singles and doubles and drawing walks. So he is a useful player for us. He was just the Divisional Series MVP, and 2 years ago he was also a Divisional Series MVP in the playoffs for us. So a pretty useful player that we got in return for Duque, and thanks for the reminder on that one. If there's other players that you're wondering about that we've talked about in the past, post down in the comments, and I will try to give an update on them. And now we'll circle back to my previous point. With the money we freed up, getting a couple of contracts off the books, having the Yankees retain most of Barofin's contracts, and then also getting some money in return on a couple of the trades, we have increased the money to $32 million for this season. So as we think about free agency here, my thought is, with Barofin on board and with over $30 million to potentially spend, that does keep us alive for a Colton Sims or a Cam Collier if we end up wanting to go to the top end of the third base market. The issue right now is that I don't want to spend $34 million on Sims, and I don't want to spend almost $27 million on Collier, and I don't want to give either of them a ton of years either. Collier, our third baseman for the last 4 years, looking for 6 years, and Colton Sims looking for 6 years at $34 million. So given that we don't have a ton of money available for extensions, signing either of them to a long-term contract would be tricky. Now, I could clearly just cut back the scouting and development budgets significantly, which would open up more money in future years, since they just assume that you're going to use whatever these numbers are down the line. So I certainly could sign either of them to a long-term contract if I wanted to, but I don't really want to do that with either of them. The other third baseman who we talked about previously was Tadayuki Sekiguchi, coming over from Japan, looking for over $20 million a year. Given that he's 31 years old, pretty mediocre defense, and the bat looks like it could be interesting with that home run power. But as some of you have noted, and I've certainly experienced, a lot of times it seems like the hitters from Japan kind of struggle their first year over here in the major leagues. Given that we are a win now team, I don't know that he makes sense for us. So with the money we've got available, if the prices and the years for a Sims or a Collier happen to come down over the coming weeks and months, we could potentially be a player for one of those. And at the very least, we've got Barofin plugged in as a corner outfielder, a less expensive option. But if we're able to add a bat like Colton Sims with his 121 career WRC plus, guy who seems to go out and hit 30, 35 home runs more often than not, would certainly be a boost to our offense. I don't love the 35 infield range. Looking at his fielding stats, he is a well below average third baseman, whether looking at his zone rating or his defensive efficiency. But I think the bat clearly makes up for that when you look at the 4.7 WAR that he put up last season. And with the way our team is currently constructed, we would potentially have guys like Joe Edwards or Tim Hull who could be late inning defensive replacements for him, easing our concerns about his glove a little bit when we do have a lead, hopefully helped by his big bat. So I don't think either of them is a perfect option, but if the years are short enough and the money gets reasonable enough and one of them lingers on the market, they are options. The other option that I'm thinking about in the infield is Anthony Volpe, who we are also scouting at this point to see what he looks like after the broken hand. I don't love that he's fragile. I do love the personality. I do like the base running acumen. And although he hasn't played third base at the major league level yet, I think he could pretty easily be trained in spring training to play third. He's a good second baseman. He's a competent shortstop. Over the course of his career, he's put up a 116 WRC plus. Can't believe that Anthony Volpe in this universe is closing in on 34 years old. Makes me feel quite old. He's looking for less money than either Sims or Collier, which makes him a little more attractive, but he is looking for a lot of years, looking for 7 years at $21.7 million. I had actually offered him a 1-year, $16 million deal just to see what he thought of that, and really didn't change his request for what he's looking for at all. So another guy who could potentially fit into our infield mix if we decide we're going to go down a less traditional third base route than Cam Collier or Colton Sims would be. But thinking about all of those guys, but don't feel like I'm just going to throw a ton of money at any of them with the number of years and dollars that they are looking for at this point. And then the other option, of course, or the other need is the corner outfielder with a decent bat, preferably a left-handed hitter. And we talked about in previous episodes, James Wood is the guy that I've kind of targeted a bit. The 32-year-old, similar to Volpe, he's unfortunately fragile, but he's a competent left or right fielder, could even play center for us in a pinch. Decent on the base paths, not looking for a ton of money, less than $10 million a year, but he's fragile as far as his injury proneness, which I don't love. But if I'm only playing him against right-handed pitching primarily, hopefully we can get him through 120 games over the course of a season without any major injuries. He started 151, 145, and 148 the last 3 years in Washington. Unfortunately, he's coming off by far the worst season of his career. He's got a 128 WRC plus for his career, but was actually below average offensively with a 98 this past season. So a player who's 32 years old now, a little bit of a concern. That said, he's led the National League in homers twice. He's closing in on 400 career homers, perennial all-star at one point during his career. think he could certainly be in the mix, and we actually made an offer to him as well, similar to Volpe. He was originally looking for 4 years. We offered him 1 year at $7.5 million, and he came back saying he would go down to 3 years at just under 8 million. He was originally 9.5, 10 million that he was looking for. So we are not too far off from him. Honestly, if we made even just the second year a team option, it would work for us. I guess, with second and third year team options, that basically means it's effectively a 1 year contract for us. He would be a modest upgrade from Barofin, so certainly a guy that I think we should think about. The reason I don't want to necessarily pull the trigger on James Wood right now is that if we do even spend $7-8 million a year for him just for this 1 year, it probably takes us out of the mix of, certainly takes us out of the mix of Sims being an option, probably takes us out of the mix of Collier being an option, and puts us in a situation where we're then wholly dependent on bringing Anthony Volpe in to potentially either be our third baseman or take over at second base if we decide to slide Seifu to third. So hopefully we'll get some of those scouting reports back in the next week or so, and these guys won't sign immediately. Would love to get an updated view of Volpe after he recovers from that broken hand, see exactly what we are dealing with him. Because Volpe is fragile, and because Wood is also fragile physically, I'm not just going to blindly throw money at either of those players. Collier and Sims are both normal in terms of their injury proneness, so they're also looking for more money. So I feel that there's options for us to consider right now. You can see we've also made a bunch of minor league contract options to players trying to build our farm system back out after we lost a bunch of minor league free agents a few days ago. So I don't think there's going to be a ton of activity for us in these early stages of the off season. Probably the big activity we're going to have over the next few weeks is getting ready for the Rule 5 draft, continuing to scout out the international amateur free agents, and then monitoring some of those free agents that I mentioned before and seeing if over time their prices come down or if they all come off the market and leave us with a ton of money. And honestly, if we have a ton of money going into the season, it's not perfect, but it's not the end of the world from my perspective either, as we've proven in the past that we can typically find some trades around the trade deadline where we'll bring on some contracts of guys who can help us. Notably, we did that this past year with several players that we brought on. Joey Moore, a left-handed reliever, a right-handed reliever, mostly rentals who were making some decent money in some cases, but we had the capacity to bring those guys on last season, and they helped us win a championship. And if we have to follow that same formula this upcoming season, it's fine. I'd feel better if I felt like both of those holes, third base and corner outfield, were filled by the time spring training begins. But if they're not, it's certainly something that we can address during the regular season. And I feel like with Barofin on the roster potentially now, and the fact that right now we've got Heiner or Bolig penciled in at first, Seifu penciled in at second, Anderson penciled in at short, likely in a platoon with Hull, that still leaves us Edwards and possibly Hull, who could play third base for us. So we're not in a desperate need at that position yet. And we haven't even made it to the winter meetings, and one of the big free agents we had talked about is already off the market. Colton Sims ended up signing with the Chicago Cubs. 4-year deal, not nearly the money he was looking for. He supposedly would still consider a trade to us. But Sims is off the market. Certainly was an interesting bat. His infield range, given we're pretty reliant on our pitching and good defense, and we've got some pitchers with ground ball tendencies I didn't love. Unfortunately, James Wood is now looking for more money. Maybe we should have kept the discussions going there earlier. He says that he's looking for 10.4 million a year over 4 years now. So his original response when we offered him that shorter deal was a little less than 8 million a year for 3 years. Should have considered that perhaps, but we're still keeping our eye on both Cam Collier and Anthony Volpe. And if we can get one of those guys signed to a shorter, less expensive, more team-friendly deal, want to keep that option open. So at this point, still not quite ready to commit anything significant to James Wood. Although to be fair, if we get him at a decent amount, it certainly doesn't take us out of the running for Volpe, and it probably just puts us in a situation where we might need to be a little creative with the structuring on Cam Collier. So we're not going to push anything quite yet. We're going to continue to bide our time a bit. But by the time we get to the winter meetings in a week, it's possible we throw another lowerish ball offer out there to one or more of those players that we've been talking about. And one of our rentals from last season that I mentioned earlier, Joey Moore, is gone. The fans are shocked we didn't keep him. I don't know why they would be. We never intended to keep him. But he signed a deal with the Mariners, a 7-year deal with a player opt-out after just 2 seasons for over $20 million a year. So nice deal for Mr. Moore. We wish him well, and we'll never forget the World Championship he contributed to for us. And we've now simmed ahead to the start of the winter meetings. Collier, Volpe, and Wood are all still on the market. I think we're going to at least get offers out to Wood and probably most likely Volpe, just to see what they think at this point about a very short-term offer for less money than they're looking for. I can't imagine they're going to be thrilled with either of those offers, but want to at least try to keep a discussion going to the extent we can. And Volpe's request is now down to 5 years. He was previously at 7, so just over a period of a few weeks, that's promising. I'm going to be offering him a 3-year deal with team options for the last 2 years. I can't imagine that's going to be incredibly attractive to him, but I think he could fit in our team well with his really good, versatile, not necessarily great defense, but with his versatile defense, particularly if he can play third base for us potentially. Good personality in the clubhouse, and still a guy who, although he's coming off of an off season, similar to what we've seen with some of the other guys we're looking at, still a player who's put up a 116 WRC plus over the course of his career. Hopefully he can bounce back and be more productive offensively. If he can't, at least we're not making a real long-term commitment to him. So I don't think this is going to get it done, and I'm not sure what type of mood Mr. Volpe will be after we make this offer. But he's looking for $21.3 million over 5 years with a vesting option for the 5th-year deal. We're going to come back with 3 years, and I'll make it slightly more palatable to him because I don't want him to break off negotiations completely. And we've got the money this upcoming year. So it's a 3-year deal at an average of $17 million a year. So we're coming up 2 more years and an extra $1 million a season average in what we've offered him. That said, there are team options for the second and third years, so it's not an incredible deal for him. But we're going to try to do this on our terms. Yeah, he still wants 5 years, and he still wants more money. I don't think we can give him the 5 years. And Cam Collier now says he's looking for 4 years at $22 million a year. So the years are not horrible for him, given that he's 3 years younger than Volpe. He's normal in terms of his injury proneness. It's certainly an expensive deal for what Cam Collier is, but he does give us another left-handed bat in the lineup with a little bit of pop. I'm going to try to structure something for Collier here, since it doesn't seem like we're making much traction with Volpe. In a perfect world, I think Volpe is a better player. I don't even think you have to be in a perfect world to say that. I think it's just a fact. When you look at Collier's 111 career WRC plus and 19.4 WAR versus what Mr. Volpe's done over the course of his career. But Collier is a third baseman against right-handed pitching, and then a guy who could pinch hit in other games. It's an expensive contract, I ain't gonna lie, but he's younger and healthier than Volpe, and it might not take much more money to get him. So we're gonna try. And Collier's looking for 4 years, averaging $22 million a year. We're going to offer him 4 years, averaging $19 million a year, with team options on the third and fourth season. We've cut back temporarily our scouting and player development budgets just to open up a little more funds as we're negotiating contracts with these players. We'll see what he thinks. Yeah, he's kind of insistent on getting what he wants, which I can't blame him for. I think I'm going to just hold tight a bit on Collier and Volpe now, hope that for at least one of them the market doesn't develop as they hope. We'll also revisit things with James Wood. He says he's looking for 4 years, $10.4 million now. That is not a number we are anywhere near coming to in terms of years or dollars. But we'll try to maybe make him a offer with some option years in it that might work for both sides. And Wood says he's now looking for 4 years at $10.4 million. We had originally offered him 1 year at $7.5. At one point a couple weeks ago, he said he would do 3 years at an average of $7.9 million. We're not quite there with this offer. It's 3 years at an average of $7.5 with team options for the second and third seasons. I don't think this will quite get it done, but want to at least see where his head is. Yeah, he still wants 4 years, and he still wants more money than what we're willing to give. So I think we're just going to hold tight. We're going to wait for our price on any free agents that we bring. As I've mentioned, with Barofin on board in the outfield, and with Edwards and Hull, who could certainly fill in at third base for us for several months, and I wouldn't feel bad about it. Wouldn't really feel necessarily bad about it if that's who we went with all last season, but could have those guys fill in for a few months and then see how the trade market materializes June and July of this upcoming season before making any real rash moves. And we've made it through the winter meetings now into the Rule 5 draft. Collier, Volpe, and Wood are all still on the market. Probably going to wait till next year before re-engaging with any of them. Doesn't look like Wood's demand has changed at all yet. Volpe's still basically where he was. And Mr. Collier is looking for more than I want to pay him. So we're willing to hold tight. Collier seems to indicate that he might have a deal from another team and be being close. If he comes off the market, it is what it is. But right now, we're going to turn our attention to the Rule 5 draft. We found some useful players over the years, particularly for our bullpen. We'll see if maybe there's a diamond in the rough or two that we can add into the mix of guys to bring into spring training in this 2034 Rule 5 draft. And in my view, there's no incredible opportunities available in the Rule 5 draft. I'd say rarely are the opportunities incredible, but sometimes there are guys that are more exciting than others, and I don't see a lot of exciting options this year. I do agree with our scout, though, on Foster Arthurs, a right-handed reliever out of Canada. Made his major league debut a year ago for Houston, where he had a 3.86 ERA over 32 and 2/3 innings. I'm assuming he was out with an injury all of last year. Yeah, coming off of a ruptured UCL, so he's just getting healthy after that. He's fragile physically. Don't think there are any guarantees that he'll make our team, but certainly would not mind bringing him into camp. So we're going to bring Foster Arthurs into camp. Moving on to the second round, and we've lost some of the veterans in our farm system, which is fine. We did not want to protect any of them and waste a 40-man roster spot on guys, including Samuel Basallo, as some of you probably noticed there. Second round, scouting director recommends we don't do anything. I do think we are going to take a flyer on a batter. Dave Bailey, left-handed hitting corner outfielder, 25 years old. Last year, between AA and AAA in the Expos organization, he did hit 28 home runs. With Barofin already on board, I think it's pretty unlikely that he ends up being the left-handed bat that we keep as a corner outfielder. That said, though, he is durable, and he is a decent hitter against right-handed pitching. Not much that he brings to the table defensively, so I think it's unlikely he'll make the team, but we'll certainly be willing to bring him into camp and give him a try. And we've made it down to January 1st, and the three guys that we've made trade offers to among the batters are the only three guys left who are 3.5-star players or better, according to our scout. So the rest of the market for free agents has dried up a bit, but the three guys that we have been intrigued by are still out there. So I'm going to see if maybe someone's willing to be a little more reasonable in terms of what they're looking for. I don't feel like we're quite at that point yet. It's only January 1st. Typically, I think we'll start seeing better bargains 6-8+ weeks from now. But going to at least revisit things and see if maybe there is a deal to be done with at least one of these guys. And Volpe is still looking for 5 years at $22.5 million. Our last offer was 3 years at $17 million. We're trying to meet him in the middle a bit. We're increasing our offer to 4 years at an average of $19 million, front-loaded towards this year. I don't think this gets it done, but I don't know that I want to go much higher than this either. He still wants 5 years at almost $23 million a year, so we're willing to let him sit out there. Cam Collier also, his demands have actually gone higher. Says he's looking at $26.4 million a year for 4 years. So his numbers keep creeping up. Doesn't seem like there's an incredible market for either of these guys. And if I sign him, I want to sign him on my terms. So If we miss out, we miss out. Woods is still looking for 4 years, 10.4 million a year, which for a fragile guy, I don't think works for me. And well, apparently Cam Collier was not lying about having other offers out there. He signed with Atlanta, 4 years, 90.4 million. So that's not a bad deal for him. 22.6 million a year. Good deal for him. Fans once again shocked that we didn't keep him, even though our kind of expectation was always that he would be moving on. And good thing we made him the qualifying offer, because we'll be getting a supplemental first-round pick from his departure, which should help ease the pain a bit. And we've still got fan interest at 100 or higher, even with the departures of Joey Moore and Cam Collier, who were the two most prominent players that we likely would be losing this offseason. And in the case of Moore, we never even made an offer. Collier, we dabbled, but I don't think we were ultimately all that serious about bringing him back at the type of money he was looking for. And we've made it to the start of the international free agent signing period. Volpe, unfortunately, has gone off the market over the past week. He was available as of the 8th. Looks like he signed with the Dodgers. Ended up kind of got what he was looking for. 5 years at almost $22 million a year. The first 4 guaranteed, and then a vesting option for that final season. We didn't want to pay quite that money, and we only wanted to go 3 or 4 years, given that he's almost 34 years old and he's fragile. Certainly would have loved to have him in the clubhouse, but not brokenhearted on missing out on either Collier or Volpe, given that we couldn't get him at our price. And James Wood still says he's looking for $10.4 million a year. So we're going to hold tight on him at this point as well. We are regularly getting trade offers from other teams as far as third basemen and corner outfielders, since we've got those defined as needs. Right now, the prices have not been anything that we're willing to pay, but I think there will be options out there, and we'll potentially have the money available to make the most of those options if we don't end up signing anybody. And at this point, even if we sign Woods, we'll still have plenty of money available to bring on guys that can help us during the regular season. So turning to international amateur free agency, and we'll kind of preview what's out there and then likely call it an episode. As we've gotten to scout these players a little better and get to know them a little more, the class looks a bit better than we thought it did last October when it first came out. We'll highlight the 3.5 star or higher players. There's 10 of them, 8 of whom we've been scouting pretty actively. The 2 that we haven't been really bringing into camp are center fielder Jesus Estrada, who is definitely an interesting prospect, pretty good outfield range, a little bit of speed. Looking for $3 million, though, and very high league interest. And Jorge Presidio, out of Panama, a right field, mediocre defensively, potentially slightly above average bat. Not incredibly exciting to me. Luis Romero, the last of the 3.5 star potential guys, is someone who we've had in camp more recently. Like the durability with him, like the really high contact, could have a above average-ish bat, but doesn't bring much to the table in terms of his speed or his defense. Tend to think he's probably a pass for us as well. Honestly, if we were going to go after anybody, I think at this point, and we wanted to get to know Romero better, but it might be a Presidio or particularly Estrada over him, turning into the 2 4-star prospects. And if I can do my math, it looks like there's actually 9 players here that are 3.5 stars or better. not the 10 that I previously mentioned, because we have also been scouting out Luis Sandoval, second baseman. Doesn't bring much to the table defensively. The bat is marginally interesting for a middle infielder, but a guy who's not looking for all that much money, who we could kind of potentially supplement in with a bigger player. But Franco Valle, a first baseman, potentially real interesting bat with 70 home run power and 65 I if he completely develops. As we see with a lot of these younger prospects, though, right now his speed and his defensive ability is quite suspect. Sergio Herrera, 17-year-old out of Venezuela, second baseman, like the high work ethic, competent-ish defensively, could have an interesting bat if he completely develops, particularly with that really good contact. The only 4.5-star prospect is center fielder Edgar Canales. This is a guy who I've liked since the beginning, and I think some of you like as well. Got 60 outfield range, got a little bit of skill on the base paths, and potentially has a pretty interesting bat. Left-handed hitter, not yet 17 years old. We've got a very strong relationship with him, and at least right now, he's not looking for a ton of money. So he is probably my most favored prospect right now of the position players that we've talked about, but we haven't talked about the big three yet, at least according to our scout. That's the third baseman, Juan Cedillo. Like the durability, the glove is not great, but his bat is still potentially interesting. At 6'2", he could certainly be a first baseman. He could also play left or right field in a pinch. So a pretty interesting bat if he fully develops. David Gallardo, center fielder, another guy that we've kind of liked since the start. Pretty good range, really nice arm, and a very interesting potential bat with 70 contact, 75 gap power, and 70 home run power if he completely develops. He does have a high work ethic, and he is durable. So I definitely like Gallardo in addition to Canales. Gallardo looking for more money, but we've got a very strong relationship with him as well. And then last but not least, the left fielder, Alejandro Flores. Bit more one-dimensional, going to strike out a lot, not make great contact, but potentially excellent home run power and a pretty good eye. He's durable, decent personality, not great defensively, but not a total disaster either. So among the everyday players, Gallardo and Canales are probably the two that I favor right now. Obviously, we'll give it more thought before I move forward on anything, and if you've got any thoughts on which direction we should go, always interested in hearing those in the comments as well. The pitching class this year was definitely thinner. You can see that Cortillo and Palencia are the two guys that we've been bringing into camp. We'll take a look at the others as well. Juan Mora, starting pitching prospect. His stuff he's got a potential 6-pitch arsenal. But best case scenario, we think, is that those pitches are major league average, only throws in the mid to high 80s. Probably not a guy that we're going to go after with high league interest. Luis Arroyo, a bit more interesting as a prospect, 16-year-old, potential 4 to 5 pitch arsenal. Looks like he could be a back end of the rotation starter if he completely developed. Another guy who's got very high league interest, though, Rogelio Ahumada out of Venezuela. Another guy who the question with him is just how good his stuff is. Movement and control on his pitches both look good. Not the hardest thrower in the world yet, and he is almost 17 years old. Probably not a guy that we would go after, but again, any of these guys, if we sign one of the big center fielders for like $3 million, and guys like this are available with the money we have left, could certainly pivot to one of them. Juan Escobedo, 16-year-old out of the Dominican, if he fully develops, he is an interesting major league starter, already throwing in the low to mid 90s. He's durable. And then Luis Arana is the highest rated, not looking for a ton of money. That slider develops, he could be an interesting major league pitcher. The control is a concern, but he's 16 years old, another guy throwing in the low to mid 90s. We don't have a great relationship with him, but he reportedly is not looking for a ton of money, so another guy who maybe we throw a little money out to see if we can just lock him up, even though we don't know him all that well. The two guys that we've been scouting more recently are Luis Palencia, 18-year-old out of Venezuela. You know I'm a sucker for the good personality, especially high work ethic and intelligence. Guy who looks like he could have a four-pitch arsenal at the major league level with slightly above average stuff, really good movement and good control on his pitches. He's a bit older as an 18-year-old, so he should be more developed. But I think he is a pretty interesting prospect as a second-tier guy who maybe, again, we could supplement in with one of the big center fielders. We've got a strong relationship with him. Reportedly, he's not even looking for $1 million, so that is a guy for us to consider. And then another older prospect is another guy that we've spent time with recently in Oliver Cortijo. A 3 to 4 pitch guy. One of the concerns about him as a starter, if that changeup doesn't develop and that slider doesn't quite get to major league average, his third pitch is a very borderline one. Scout still projects him as someone whose stuff, movement, and control could all be a bit above average to well above average. Certainly more high league interest in him, and he's also looking for $1.5 million. Quite honestly, my initial thought is to probably go after Palencia. I think he's a pretty well-balanced prospect. I like the fact that 3 of his pitches are fairly developed according to our scout, like the good personality in terms of his work ethic and his intelligence. My inclination is probably to go after a Palencia and then figure out among the 2 center fielders that we like, Gallardo and Canales, which one of them we prefer, and maybe make an offer to one of the center fielders and Palencia right now and see if maybe we can lock up a nice everyday player prospect and a nice pitching prospect with most of the money, the $4.75 million that we have available. And then if there's anything else available and we're able to get both of those guys signed, maybe go bargain shopping at the lower end of the market with any money we have left. So that's kind of what I think my plan is at a 50,000 foot level. Interested in your thoughts, if you have them, on which direction we should go in international amateur free agency. Would also love to hear what you think about what we've done in free agency period, or quite honestly more what we haven't done. Should we have gone more aggressively after a Sims or a Collier or a Volpe, or is kind of biding our time, maybe ultimately bringing Woods on board? We could certainly look at the lower end of the market for a guy who could play third base also. Might be time to consider looking at the trade market. And again, we don't really have quite this much money because actually we can probably put our scouting and development budgets back where they were, because we're not going to be going for a monster free agent this year. And we also did have to increase our draft budget a bit to address the fact that we now have that supplemental first round pick from the departure of Collier. So I wanted to make sure we were kind of in line with what we needed there as well. So we still have plenty of money to spend on this upcoming season, particularly. As we've talked about, the guy that I am most intrigued with is James Wood. Over the course of his career, 128 WRC plus. And we look at what he's done against right-handed batters, a little better with a 129 WRC plus. And if we did bring him on board, that would likely not necessarily guarantee that Barofin didn't make the team, but it would likely guarantee that Barofin is a fifth outfielder not getting regular playing time. Barofin with a 114 WRC plus against right-handed pitchers over the course of his career, and he is at 110 overall. So Barofin, a little bit older, similar defensively, and not quite as good offensively over the course of his career. So I think it's fair to say that Wood would be a small upgrade over Barofin. He is fragile physically, and he's looking for a lot more money than we're going to pay Barofin. So we've got some decisions to make as we get further into this off season. We'll start off the next episode letting you know what we decide to do with the international amateur free agents, and then see if perhaps we're able to sign a James Wood, maybe go in a different direction. I know some of you have touted C.J. Abrams to us in the past. I mean, he's wrecked physically, looking for pretty good money, and the bat is average-ish at best at this point. He does have good speed. Not quite as much infield range as most of the guys on our roster right now, so I don't know that he's a perfect fit, but there never is a perfect fit unless you have an unlimited budget. So we will proceed with the off season and proceed with international amateur free agency in our next episode. If you've got thoughts on what we should do, as I mentioned, please share them in the comments down below. And until our next episode, thanks so much for watching, and hope you have a great day.